Could telling your truth be your undoing rather than your strength? It's a question that lives strangely in the pit of your stomach, flickering between anxiety and defiance whenever you're on the verge of confession, whether in a job interview, a vulnerable conversation with a friend, or that tense moment before voicing your real opinion in a room filled with nodding heads. We are taught, almost from the cradle, that honesty is an unimpeachable good, a sunbeam guiding us out of all manner of shadowy deceptions. But I want to trouble that comfort, to press on the bruise of our modern wisdom and suggest, perhaps even to whisper, that honesty can sometimes be a dangerous gift. Truth is a virtue, yes, but in the wrong context, the sword meant to protect us becomes, just as easily, the blade that finds our back. Turn to Machiavelli, not just the caricatured emblem of scheming politicians, but the shrewd observer of power and frailty. He argued, perhaps to our discomfort, that those who speak and live with unflinching transparency are often the first to be destroyed. In his world, and perhaps ours, what mattered most was not the noble kernel hidden within, but the shimmering husk on display for all to see. The wise ruler, according to Machiavelli, must be like both lion and fox, brave and strong, yes, but also cunning, master of appearances, artful in deception when the stakes demanded it. If you always show your cards, you invite everyone at the table to play against you. Here's the uncomfortable context. We do not live in a world run exclusively by merit or sincerity. Instead, we inhabit a landscape of shifting allegiances, unspoken motivations, and curated selves. When was the last time you posted an unfiltered thought on social media and felt safer rather than exposed? When did you see someone's candid confession at work lead to a promotion rather than a whispered warning? The systems we navigate, political, professional, personal, are built with walls, doors, and mirrors. And those who pass through unscathed are as often the ones who understand what to reveal, what to withhold, when to confide, and when to conceal. But why does this paradox matter? Why should we examine with open eyes the risks contained within that cherished idea? Tell your truth. Because, I'd argue, the real world demands we recognize the double-edged nature of honesty. The more openly you speak your mind, the greater the exposure not only of your brilliance, but also of your flaws, your weaknesses, your doubts. Oversharing is lauded in our culture for its authenticity, but do we pause often enough to ask, yes, but at what cost? Is authenticity always the wisest form of strength, or is discretion an unacknowledged grace? If you've ever wondered why wise people often seem enigmatic, why their intentions shimmer just out of reach, like fish beneath a glassy surface, perhaps it's because they know something we don't. They have made their peace with the idea that the truth can be sheltering, but wielded carelessly, it can also be a beacon to hunters. This reflection, then, is not an argument for deception as the ultimate good, nor a cynical surrender to duplicity, but an invitation to consciousness, a challenge to the reflex that equates openness with virtue. Together, let's step into a philosophical journey that may unsettle easy answers but promises a richer, deeper engagement with the everyday moments where honesty becomes a question of wisdom, not innocence. What if the most important truths about ourselves are not those we broadcast, but those we tend to privately and, when necessary, strategically reveal? So, as we move forward, hold this question close. Will your truth free you or unravel you? And as you reflect, ask not just if you can trust others with your honesty, but if it always serves you to trust honesty with others. The way forward is rarely straight. Like Machiavelli's fox and lion, it asks us to navigate with courage and cunning, to learn when to be overt and when to let silence carry weight. If wisdom lies anywhere, perhaps it is in knowing that to guard the truth is, sometimes, the deepest form of care for yourself and for the fragile connections you wish to preserve. Let's begin. Let us step further into this winding hall of mirrors, where honesty is not always the torch we imagine it to be, and truth, when wielded carelessly, can become a double-edged sword. Throughout the turbulence of history, there have always been thinkers who understood the treacherous terrain of unguarded honesty. Machiavelli, the ever-controversial Florentine, cautioned that the naked display of one's intentions could be disastrous. In The Prince, he advises rulers to guard their innermost truths, for the court is filled not with confidants, but with opportunists. To Machiavelli, raw candor was a self-inflicted wound in political life, a fatal sign of naivete rather than virtue. How often, even in our own lives, do we find that showing all our cards does not invite respect, but rather exploitation? Just as a ruler who confides in the wrong advisor risks a toppled throne, so too do we risk diminishment if we reveal our inner essence to those who seek only advantage. Think, too, of Sun Tzu, whose ancient wisdom guided generals through the fog of war. He taught that to succeed you must appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. That concealment is not cowardice but an artful defense. Imagine yourself in battle. Would you loudly announce your strategy to the opposing army, believing that honesty is its own protection? The greatest tacticians know that sometimes silence is not deceit, it is survival. Perhaps you've been in situations, even outside of war, where holding back your full opinion prevented unnecessary conflict or gave you room to maneuver. The lesson here is unmistakable. Sometimes the veil is not a mask, but a shield. Yet, history's cautionary tales are not only about kings and soldiers. Remember Galileo Galilei, a seeker of cosmic truths whose honesty came at an unbearable price. His declaration that the Earth moved around the sun, not the other way around, threatened the prevailing world order. What did his radical transparency bring him? Condemnation, isolation, house arrest. Galileo's pain endures as a warning. Truth, raw and unchecked, can be dangerous, not just to its bearer, but to the fragile structures of society built on comforting illusion. Would you, given the chance, risk everything to say what others are unprepared or unwilling to hear? Should you? This leads us beyond history to the inner workings of our own minds and relationships. Friedrich Nietzsche warned against what he called the will to truth, the reckless impulse to speak assertions so profound or unsettling that they overwhelm those who hear them. He observed that most people, when confronted with hard truths, instinctively recoil, sometimes attacking the truth-teller rather than the lie itself. Nietzsche's solution was not gloom, but discernment. Wisdom, he said, is knowing when, and how much, truth to share. Zen Buddhism, on the other hand, entrusts its deepest teachings not to overt instruction, but to riddles, paradoxes, or even silence. Why? Because enlightenment cannot be forced upon another. Wisdom delivered carelessly may be twisted, misunderstood, or weaponized. Sometimes the gentlest answers are not answers at all, but questions returned, or stories told obliquely, waiting for the listener's mind to ripen. Pause for a moment and think about your own life. In our era, we find ourselves surrounded by an unprecedented invitation to overshare. Social media tempts us every hour to spill our truths before an invisible, unaccountable audience. How often do we confuse vulnerability with responsibility, forgetting that not all that is felt must be shared, and not all listeners are friends? We post our fears, our private victories, our rawest wounds, believing this will bring us closer to others, more authentic. But like moths to a flame, we sometimes find that the more visible we become, the more others are tempted to poke, prod, or manipulate. Do our likes and comments nurture us, or do they simply feed the algorithms that profit from our openness? Is the world, the real, breathing world, the right place for every fragile, flickering truth we hold? And so, what is to be done? Discernment must become our watchword. Before you reveal your heart, ask, who is listening? Are they worthy? What is their history with honesty, their capacity for kindness, or their readiness for complexity? Not every person in your life deserves access to your inner sanctum. Some things are precious precisely because they are protected, not displayed. The wise do not fear sharing truth, but they recognize the necessity, and sometimes the sacredness, of boundaries. Like a craftsman who selects the right tool for each task, a sage weighs the cost and context before unveiling the truth. Let us not confuse secrecy with shame, nor privacy with dishonesty. Rather, let us affirm that wisdom lives in the ability to share deeply with those who have earned our trust, and to hold silence where there is no fertile ground. Above all, remember, truth is not a blunt weapon nor a careless confession. It is a force, a latent power, that gains meaning only through the skill with which it is brought forth. To be honest is not to be naive. To wield truth is to carry both a torch and a blade. Will you wield yours wisely? Or will you cast it heedlessly into the world, only to watch as it is twisted, diluted, or hurled back with twice the force? The answer, always, is in your hands. Let's pause and peer through the lens of alternative perspectives, for the landscape of truth-telling is far from a single open plain. Instead, it's a tangled forest, paths branching and twisting, with each direction leading to a different destination. To withhold the truth, is it an act of petty manipulation, a coward's ruse to sidestep discomfort? Or might there be times when discretion transforms into genuine wisdom, a subtle art of knowing when to speak and when to remain, like the Sphinx, inscrutable? Can honesty, stripped raw and poured uncompromisingly onto the world, ever be regarded as radical transparency, something pure, or, at times, something bordering on violence? Consider the old story from Egyptian mythology. Isis, determined to know the secret name of the sun god Ra, concocts a venomous serpent. Bitten, Ra suffers, and in his agony is forced to surrender to Isis the one thing no god should part with, his innermost name, the symbol of his very power. It's a tale that shivers with implications. Here, the act of withholding a truth is not mere secrecy, but a sacred boundary. To know all, to reveal all, changes the balance of the very world. Power slips, alters hands. What, then, might we risk when we yield every secret, every vulnerability, in the name of truth? And what of the power of silence? There is a particular flavor of wisdom in what goes unsaid, a kind of presence that can be more commanding than the most eloquent monologue. Imagine two people in a heated boardroom, one arguing passionately, voice reverberating off the walls. The other, barely speaking, simply watching, unreadable, their silence a mirror reflecting the frenzy back onto its source. The tension escalates, but it is the one who withholds who controls the rhythm of the entire room. Is that not a kind of communication, more subtle, perhaps more honest, than speaking without restraint? We find echoes of this paradox in the words of Lao Tzu. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. The tangled interplay between knowing and voicing one's knowledge becomes even more pronounced in our own interactions. How often do we feel, within the very marrow of our beings, the ego's compulsion to declare, to confess, or to unload what burdens us? Yet, Does the world always benefit from our candor? Or does authentic connection require something more artful, timing and empathy, a tuning in to the rhythms of another's capacity to receive? Ask yourself, when have you been on the receiving end of so-called radical honesty, that friend or stranger who blurts out brutal opinions in the name of transparency? Was it a gift or a bludgeon? Was the connection between you strengthened, or did it wither beneath the cold glare of someone else's unfiltered perspective? The bluntness mistaken for courage is so often just a failure of imagination, of empathy. A wise person, after all, does not unload truth like a boulder dropped from a great height. Instead, they consider both the architecture of the moment and the fragility of those present. This art of balanced truth is nowhere clearer than in the practices of the Stoics. The old Roman generals, men of strategy both on the field and in the echoing marble halls of power, wore battle masks, not just for protection, but as a deliberate restraint of their true selves. Vulnerability, laid too bare, could unravel alliances and inspire betrayal. The philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote privately, "Do not give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they do not care." Even at the heights of power, transparency had its limits. One's internal struggles and even wisdom were best shared with those who had earned the privilege to listen. So how, then, should we approach the dilemma? Modern advice, at least the kind that doesn't reduce nuance to slogans and TED Talk aphorisms, suggests that truth should be a key, not a hammer. The point is not to bash down every door carelessly, but to unlock connection, to gently open what is ready to be opened. Emotional connection, the readiness of the listener to truly hear, must be established before uncomfortable facts can be served without destruction. Think of the physician who, before delivering difficult news, sits close and sees the whole person, not a mere bearer of facts, but one who bears the patient's humanity as gently as their own. In the end, it is not merely what is said, but how it is said. Framing and presentation, the delivery as significant as the message itself. This, perhaps, is a shadow of ancient Hermetic wisdom. The universe is mental, the old texts whisper. Truth itself is shaped by the mind. How we conceive it, how we present it, transforms its impact. The honest person is not a relentless broadcaster, but a sculptor, chipping away, dusting off, revealing in stages what is beautiful, necessary, or kind. Truth, at its best, is not an instrument of dominance, but of communion. The art lies in knowing the difference and daring to practice it. So much of life aches with the question, what is to be done with the truth we hold? Maybe you've felt it too, the gnawing urge to speak your mind, to clarify, to shout, "I know what's real," only to feel, moments later, that strange hollowness when your words are misunderstood or rejected. Why then does truth, a thing so revered in philosophy, in religion, in the small hours when you are alone with your own conscience, so often fail to bring us the connection, relief, or purpose we crave? At the heart of this question lies a deeper one still. Is truth always a virtue, or is it sometimes a burden, a blade, or even a shield? And if it is all of these, what wisdom guides us to use it well? Consider for a moment the disciplined silence of the samurai. In those vivid depictions, the warrior sits, sword sheathed, eyes unblinking, listening more than he speaks. There is a fierce restraint there, a power that comes not from what is done, but from what is withheld. What is this restraint but a mastery over the inner compulsion to reveal all, to justify each decision, to defend one's every feeling? The ancient samurai knew instinctively what many of us struggle to learn even now. Truth in its rawest form is not always to be brandished. There are times when it must be cradled close, guarded with the same discipline one uses for a weapon that can cut both others and oneself. Too often we confuse honesty with an obligation to explain, as if every subtlety of heart demands an audience. But must you recount every disappointment, name every misunderstanding, and hand over every hard-earned glimmer of insight? Imagine a chess master holding back her gambit until the precise moment, a move not revealed, a strategy kept secret, deepening the tension on the board. What if you, too, approached your truths with such strategic patience? Do you reveal in order to enlighten, or simply to relieve your own pressure? Are you compelled to spill unvarnished realities, or can you dwell comfortably in the fertile ground of restraint? Of course, to walk this path isn't to advocate deception or to slide lazily into cynicism. It's not the enemy of honesty, but the evolution of it, a sharpening, a refinement. Honesty in its naive, compulsive form can be like a child blurting out an embarrassing fact at the dinner table. Pure, yes, but not always helpful. That child must grow, learning discernment, understanding when the world is ready to receive the truth, and when the world will simply use it as ammunition against them. Have you ever, in a moment of raw candor, found your words twisted or turned into a weapon? Then you know that truth, though beautiful, is not inherently safe. But what then to do with this potent force? Begin here. Truth must be curated to context, situation-aware, rather than compulsively brandished. Not all questions demand full disclosure. Not everyone has earned the privilege of your most cherished beliefs or your hardest lessons. Sometimes the greatest act of honesty is to hold your tongue until your audience, whether a friend, a lover, or a stranger, shows the openness to cherish your words rather than distort them. To act with such discipline is an art of self-respect, and an art of influence. You illuminate, you liberate, not by relentless justification, but by weighted, chosen revelation. There's peril, too, in seeking validation through perpetual sharing. In craving approval, you risk reducing your truth to a performance, a token traded for acceptance or applause. Eventually, you become addicted to the feedback loop, the likes, the nods, the murmurs of agreement, forgetting that deep wisdom often walks alone, silent and misunderstood. What power does it yield, though, to care less about universal understanding and invest instead in self-mastery? To know quietly that your truth is resilient enough to weather doubt, to remain unsullied in solitude? Let your revelations serve both you and your audience. Protect your inner wisdom with thoughtful discretion. Reveal yourself in the manner of a slow-burning lamp, illuminating with intention, not blinding indiscriminately. Think of how secrets, carefully held and skillfully revealed, can transform not just perception, but possibility itself. Your truth, then, becomes not a confession, but a carefully tended fire, something to gather around, to warm by, rather than to be burned by. So, let these reflections guide you. See truth less as an unfiltered flood, and more as a river you can guide, dam, or release as the landscape demands. Remember, power lies as much in the graceful silence as in the spoken word. The unseen influence, the wisdom others sense but can't quite grasp, the restraint they feel but can't name, is the mystery that makes the world listen more closely. Imagine, next time you are tempted to explain yourself endlessly, choosing instead the patient quiet of the samurai, the hushed strength of a master awaiting the moment. In this way, the art of truth becomes not only a journey outward, toward those who may or may not understand, but more profoundly, a journey inward, toward self-mastery, and the patient, luminous cultivation of what you alone know to be true. And in the hush, in the delicate art of what is left unsaid, you may find the deepest resonance of all. Will you dare to wield the power of your own silence?